Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Justina Sanchez, and I want to say happy 7th anniversary to HSBN. Thank you, Apostle Bills and Apostle Anne Marie. I have been impacted in such a profound way by their yes to the Lord. I am so incredibly grateful for them and the ways that they've grown me, the ways that they've challenged me and stretched me, all in the best way possible. So thank you so much. I appreciate you both. So what are exploits? That's the theme of this conference, higher exploits, right? What are exploits? The dictionary defines an exploit as notable, memorable, or a heroic act. But a biblical exploit exists to preach the gospel of Jesus, to raise up men and women of God who will take a stand, unashamed as oaks of righteousness. In the book of Daniel, chapter 11, early on, it's talking about a terrible time of suffering under an awful king who used flattery to win over people who had violated the covenant at that time. But it goes on to say in verse 32 that the people that know their God shall be strong and do exploits. I'll say that again. But the people that know their God shall be strong and do exploits. That means we have to know him, not just know him, but know him. In 2 Peter, chapter 1, verse 2, it says, "Grace and peace be yours as you grow in the knowledge of who God is." So as we grow in the knowledge of who God is, we receive grace. We receive peace in abundance as we grow in knowing who he is. Now you can go out and do those higher exploits that he's called you to do. And there is a grace on you for these, and there's a peace within you as you go forth and do these. You say, "Yes, God, I'll go out. I'll do what you're asking me to do." Your exploits, your capacity here on earth is going to be based on the knowledge of who God is. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 12 says, "For I know whom I have believed, and I am persuaded that he is able to keep what I have committed to him until that day." Paul says, I know who I believe. You see, it's difficult to know somebody and believe somebody when you don't really know who they are. So as you grow in the knowledge of who God is, you start to build a history with God. You build trust in him, in your relationship. You start to see his faithfulness in your life. You build confidence in who he is and what it is he's calling you to do. Now, a modern day example of a higher exploit can be found right here in this room. In fact, there's many, but I'm specifically talking about Apostle Bills and Apostle Anne Marie, what they have done with their lives, and their yes to God. That is a higher exploit. They continue to raise up men and women of God, many of whom you've heard and you will hear today. I also want you to consider some other things that you may not have considered to be a higher exploit. I think some people may have the impression that if they don't do this huge act that makes this grand impact, that it's not considered a higher exploit. But I challenge you to consider other things that might look a little different. I want to share a personal story with you. Is that okay? For example, professionally, I'm an engineer and an auditor. I've been recognized a lot of times in these roles, and recently, one of the top 50 women of influence in engineering. I'll tell you, that's all God. Thank you. That's all God and his grace on my life. That's a notable achievement, right? But what's that going to look like in 10 years? I propose that an even higher exploit in my life right now is that I homeschool my daughter, because I see the value in investing in her future. I make sacrifices daily to protect her from what the world is trying to teach her. And now, my 10-year-old daughter, Lillian, she's a broadcaster right here on HSBN and does her own devotional segments on a show. and that's called Radiant Pearls Girls. I remember when I was learning about all the things she was being taught, it was when the pandemic hit and all of the kids were sent home with iPads to do school from home. I would often find myself questioning the things that I heard the teacher say. A few months into that, we came to the end of the 4th grade, and I knew I was faced with a decision right there, whether to keep her in public school or to begin homeschooling her. You know, you have to look at every aspect of your lives because these are huge decisions. And being a working mom, full-time working, my husband, full-time working, could we do that? So many times I would talk to the Lord about it, and I was sitting in prayer one night, and I was really wrestling with him, saying, Lord, I don't have time to do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't even know where you began. But that very night, this was 8 days before she was supposed to start public school, the Lord brought across my path a Christian homeschool program that allows for kids to go to a campus 3 days a week. I had never heard of such a thing. I didn't even know that was a real thing. But it was, and God knew. And the very next day, I called them. They happened to open up a new 4th and 5th grade class and had 12 seats available. He totally blew me away in this, and he made a way for me to work from home, homeschool my daughter, and she gets to be around children 3 days a week, but it's a wonderful program, and I tell you, they're very adamant that you are the teacher, and we are here to support you. And I think that's great. And to me, that's a higher exploit. Investing in my child, I'm even investing in grandchildren I don't have yet, and generations to come because of that. I'll be honest, I never used to think homeschooling moms made that big of an impact. I think they had this stigma on them that the world never saw. But those are the true higher exploits right there. And it wasn't until this last season that I saw that and I realized that. And my eyes were open to the fact that they are changing generations to come. So I encourage you to look at the things in your life, the things that may seem insignificant, and consider the lasting outcomes of your choices. My hope is that Lillian, my daughter, will grow up to be a mighty woman of God. I know that she is a leader for this generation. She will be unashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it all started with a yes to God. He has been faithful. He has been trustworthy. And I know that because I know him. Jeremiah chapter 9, verse 23 says, "Let not the wise boast in their wisdom, or strong boast in their strength, or the rich boast in their riches. See, it's only in the knowledge of God and who he is that we should boast." It's not an intellectual pursuit, and it's not an academic achievement. It's seeking after God with your whole heart, with every fiber of who you are. Now, I want to challenge you to sit at his feet a little bit longer. Listen to him more. Step out even when it's scary, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's hard. When you just don't know what's going to happen, step out and let God show you. It's in that you will see his faithfulness. You're going to grow in the intimacy of who he is. Stay in the secret place longer. Listen for him to speak. Sermons and teachings are nice. They're great. But there's no replacement for sitting at the feet of Jesus. And then when you hear from God ourselves, there's a confidence that comes when you go in and act upon what he spoke and asked you to do. This, my friends, is the wellspring of eternal life. Now, I'd like to ask that you all take a minute and say, God, what higher exploit are you calling me to do? Can we do that? Okay, let's take a minute. God, what higher exploit are you calling me to do? Now listen. Now go ahead and note that down. Note that down on a piece of paper. Note that down in your phone. Now, what is the very next thing that you can do towards going after that higher exploit? The Lord, I believe he is rising up apostles right here, right now in this room. He is rising up pastors. He is rising up teachers right here, right now. Some of you may be looking around thinking, I need a confirmation, Lord. Was that you? I need a sign. This is it. This is your confirmation that, yes, that's what he's asking you to do. It's in your obedience that you are going to find him. You are going to grow with him. So I encourage you to take that next step. I believe that he wants to grow in intimacy with all of us, and he never ends. There is no end to what he does. There is no end to the goodness of who he is. He's been there in the good times, the hard times, the fun times, the joyous times. He is faithful, and I know that I can say that I know him, and I continue to know him and grow in him and seek after him and pursue his heart. And so I just want to bless you in that, in your pursuit with him. And I know that he has great things for all of us as we say yes to God. Thank you.